Marilene Soriano and Evelyn Hartwick never imagined that a simple job offer would pull them into a deadly web of digital traps, hidden estates, and a criminal mastermind whose reach could erase a life in seconds. Marilene spent most of her life in the same small neighborhood in Quezon City. Her days were predictable, filled with quiet routines that never changed. She worked long hours as a records officer for a small company, went home to a modest apartment, cooked simple meals, and sent part of her salary to her siblings who depended on her. At 53 years old, she felt worn down by the years of responsibility and the lack of excitement in her life. She often wondered if she had missed her chance to experience something bigger. The thought never left her, especially during the silent evenings when the only sound in her apartment came from the old electric fan in the corner. One evening, while sorting through her emails, she discovered an unexpected message from an Australian consulting agency named Cobalt Point Solutions. The email looked professional, the logo crisp, the tone formal. It stated that her name had been recommended for a short-term documentation job in Sydney. The pay was unusually generous, far more than she earned in months. At first, she assumed it was a mistake. But the message included her full name, her work history, and even her correct employment dates. She felt both surprised and curious. For years, she had dreamed of traveling, but always feared going alone. This offer seemed to give her a chance she never thought she would receive. The next message arrived. It included a contract, a prepaid round-trip ticket, and instructions for her arrival. Everything looked legitimate. The agency stated they would handle her accommodation and meals. All she needed to do was show up at the airport and board the flight. Marilene's hands shook slightly as she held the printed documents. She had never received an international job offer before, and this one came with no conditions that sounded suspicious. She felt hopeful, something she had not felt in a long time. She spent days preparing for the trip. She bought new clothes, organized her documents, and treated herself to a small haircut, believing it was time for a fresh start. She told her family she would be away for 2 months, but didn't reveal much more because she wanted to surprise them with savings once she returned. Her siblings encouraged her, glad she finally had something special to look forward to. On the day of her departure, Marilene arrived at the airport early. She felt nervous but excited. She checked in, passed through security, and sat near the boarding gate quietly watching people rush to their flights. She imagined what Sydney would look like, how the air might feel different, how she would spend her first evening exploring the city. She convinced herself she was finally doing something brave. The flight was long but calm. Marilene spent most of the time staring out the window watching the clouds shift in slow waves beneath the aircraft. She imagined the beaches, buildings, and landscapes she had seen in travel brochures. Every hour that passed brought her closer to a place she had only seen in pictures. She felt grateful, even lucky. When the plane finally landed, she followed the crowd toward immigration. The airport looked modern and bright. She felt small inside the wide halls, but also hopeful. As she walked through the arrival area, she looked around for the company representative. She expected someone holding a sign with her name. Instead, she saw none. Her eyes wandered until she noticed a sleek black vehicle parked near the exit. A digital display on its dashboard showed her full name. She hesitated for a moment, but the car looked official, and she assumed the company had arranged private transport. Believing everything was part of the plan, she stepped inside, unaware that this single decision would unravel her life in ways she could never have imagined. Inside that quiet vehicle, her journey stopped being a dream and began turning into something far more dangerous, something no one back home could have predicted. The car door closed with a soft thud, and Marilene felt a strange weight settle in her chest. The interior was spotless, almost too clean, and the faint scent of industrial disinfectant filled the air. The driver, Lucas Morel, kept his eyes fixed on the road as he pulled away from the airport. He looked composed, dressed in a dark uniform with no visible logo. Marilene tried to relax, but the silence inside the vehicle felt heavier with every passing minute. At first, she assumed they were heading toward the city. She expected to see busy streets, tall buildings, and familiar tourist landmarks she had seen online. Instead, the vehicle turned toward a long, empty highway leading away from the urban center. As the airport lights faded behind them, the surroundings grew darker and quieter. The roads seemed endless, stretching through wide fields and industrial zones with no people in sight. The deeper they went, the more uneasy she felt. Marilyn tried to study the scenery to calm herself. She watched rows of warehouses, rusted fences, and isolated truck depots slide past the windows. Nothing resembled the welcoming, lively city she had imagined. Her breathing tightened, but she convinced herself that the agency might have offices outside the main city to save costs. It was not unusual for companies to choose remote locations for administrative work. She clung to that thought, even as her instincts whispered that something was wrong. The car continued deeper into the outskirts until buildings became sparse. The highway narrowed and tall eucalyptus trees lined both sides of the road. A thick silence filled the air, broken only by the rhythm of the engine. The sun began to set behind the horizon, casting long shadows that made the landscape look even more desolate. Marilene felt her palms grow cold, and the faint vibration of the car seat against her back heightened her tension. Eventually, the vehicle slowed as it approached a towering metal gate hidden behind dense foliage. The gate opened automatically, triggered by a sensor. Beyond it lay a wide property surrounded by high fencing. The driveway stretched through a line of trees that hid the buildings inside. The deeper the car moved into the property, the more distant the outside world felt. When the lodge-like structure finally came into view, it looked oddly inviting from a distance. Warm lights illuminated the windows, and the architecture resembled a modern retreat house. But something about the stillness around it made the place feel abandoned despite its polished appearance. No workers stood outside, no vehicles were parked nearby, and no signs indicated this was an office for new employees. The structure stood alone, almost staged. The car stopped in front of the entrance, and Lucas stepped out without saying a word. He opened the door for Marilene, and she stepped onto the gravel path, feeling the cold evening air brush against her arms. She glanced around the property, listening for any natural sounds, birds, footsteps, voices. There was nothing. Only the steady hum of hidden machinery somewhere inside the building. Lucas led her to the door, then walked away toward another pathway, leaving her without instructions. The door behind her slid open automatically, and she stepped inside. The interior felt clean, but strangely lifeless. A hallway stretched forward, illuminated by soft ceiling lights. On the walls hung generic artwork that looked artificial, as if chosen to distract rather than decorate. As she explored further, she noticed something unsettling. Every corridor had hidden cameras positioned in corners, barely noticeable unless someone looked closely. Motion sensors glowed faintly on the walls, and the doors were reinforced with heavy internal locks. The building felt more like a controlled environment than an office. She entered a room that appeared prepared for her stay. A bed, a desk, and a neatly placed welcome folder sat on the table. But the folder was empty. The room was designed to look comfortable, yet everything felt staged, like a photograph of a home rather than a real one. With each passing minute, Marilyn felt the invisible walls closing in. She didn't know where she was, why the agency had brought her here, or why she had not met a single staff member. She only knew one thing for certain. Whatever she had walked into was far from the opportunity she had believed it to be. The silence of the estate settled around her like a warning she could no longer ignore. Marilyn stood in the center of the unfamiliar room, feeling the quiet push against her from all sides. The stillness of the estate did not feel like rest. It felt like surveillance. She studied the walls, noticing tiny gaps where cameras blended into corners. Even the air felt controlled, circulating through vents that hummed with a low mechanical rhythm. She knew the moment she entered the property that something was wrong, but now the certainty settled into her like a cold weight. She stepped out of the room and walked down the hallway slowly, observing every detail. The floors were spotless, the lights perfectly spaced, and the temperature unchanging. The environment felt too precise, as if someone had deliberately engineered every corner to behave exactly the same at all times. The more she looked, the less the building resembled an office and the more it resembled a research facility disguised as a lodge. She found a room at the end of the hallway with its door slightly open. Curiosity pushed her to peek inside. The space was filled with computer equipment. Several monitors, a server tower with blinking lights, and shelves lined with sealed storage boxes. A single chair sat at the center as if waiting for someone to use it. The equipment looked new, untouched, and arranged with professional accuracy. Yet no one was around. Marilyn noticed another door inside the room locked with a digital panel. The panel displayed a red indicator, and she sensed whatever was behind that door was not meant for her. She felt an urge to leave the room immediately, but before she moved, a faint sound came from the walls, a soft click, followed by the quiet activation of something mechanical. The door behind her slid shut on its own, making her jump. She rushed toward it, relieved to find it wasn't locked. The sensation that she was being monitored grew stronger. She hurried back to her assigned room and sat on the edge of the bed. Every instinct told her to leave the estate, but she had no transportation, no contact numbers, and no knowledge of the area outside the gate. She felt trapped in a place she had willingly entered. The unsettling feeling crept deeper into her thoughts as she replayed the events of the day. Unknown to Marilyn, at that same moment, miles away in the city, cybersecurity officer Evelyn Hartwick was working late at her desk. She had recently been tracking an unusual data pattern connected to identity manipulation. A signal kept surfacing from an off-grid location. It was faint, encrypted, and trying to mask itself, but the signature was recognizable. Evelyn recognized it as the same pattern linked to a criminal known for stealing identity profiles. She sat forward as the digital trace pulsed across her screen again. The signal was active. Someone or something had triggered the system that evening. Back at the estate, Marilyn decided to explore the hallway further, hoping to find another human presence. She walked toward a staircase at the far end. The stairs led down to a lower floor with fewer lights. The air felt cooler and the hum of machinery grew louder. She reached the bottom and discovered a long corridor lined with closed rooms. She tried a door at random, but it didn't budge. Every door she tried remained locked. She turned to return upstairs when the lights above her dimmed, then brightened again. The sudden shift made her heart race. She moved quickly back up the stairs, her steps echoing through the hollow building. When she reached the main floor, she saw something she hadn't noticed before. The entrance door, the one she had walked through earlier, now displayed a steel lock she hadn't seen before. It looked like it had sealed itself automatically. A realization struck her. This building was not a workplace. It was a controlled environment designed to monitor and contain. Someone had built this place for a purpose, and she had become a part of that purpose the moment she stepped inside. As she backed away from the locked entrance, she heard a faint clicking sound again, like devices resetting behind the walls. The estate felt alive, as though it had activated an internal system in reaction to her presence. She sensed the trap had not just closed around her, it had been waiting for her all along. Evelyn Hartwick spent years tracking unusual cyber patterns, but the one she had been studying for months was unlike anything she had seen before. It appeared only in short bursts, always from remote locations, and always tied to stolen identity networks that moved silently across international borders. Each time she came close to identifying the source, the signal vanished, as if someone had pulled a cord and erased every trace. Now, the same signal had resurfaced, pulsing steadily from a particular region far from Australia's main cities. Its strength was sharper, clearer, and more direct, proof that something significant was happening at the location. She leaned over her computer, reviewing the data with practiced precision. The server activity connected to a known criminal named Jasper Thorne. His name circulated in underground cyber circles, whispered among investigators who understood the magnitude of his operations. Jasper had no visible face in legal records, no confirmed address, and no digital footprint left intact long enough to track. He existed through codes, rerouted data, and stolen profiles stitched together to form identities that never truly belonged to him. Over the years, he had replaced dozens of people online, erasing them while inserting near-perfect digital replicas under his control. The problem was simple and terrifying. Victims often disappeared before authorities realized their identities had been taken. As Evelyn studied the signal's behavior, she noticed something new. An activation sequence triggered inside a building. It wasn't random. Someone had entered a space that wasn't meant to be accessed by outsiders. The system reacted in a way that suggested it was preparing for extraction, the process Jasper used to gather biometric details from his targets. She understood immediately that a person was inside the estate. A real human being had walked into the heart of the network she had spent months trying to understand. She ran the data again, confirming the coordinates, then alerted her supervisors. Within minutes, a tactical response team was assigned to her findings. They prepared to move toward the remote area, but the landscape made the journey slow and complicated. Evelyn felt the urgency rising. Whoever was inside did not have much time. While the team mobilized, Evelyn continued gathering information. She uncovered hidden logs mapping out Jasper's previous patterns. Every location he used appeared carefully chosen, places isolated, unreachable, and filled with systems designed to operate without human staff. The estate Marilene had entered was another of Jasper's traps, built to capture identity data without leaving evidence behind. Evelyn realized the design relied on total control, automatic locks, pre-programmed systems, and digital tools that replaced human supervision. Meanwhile, inside the building, Marilene roamed the upper hallway. She felt the walls closing around her as she tried to understand the layout. Each section of the estate looked nearly identical, as if meant to confuse anyone who entered. She reached an office she hadn't seen before. Inside sat a row of screens displaying code she couldn't understand. Some screens showed silhouettes moving through the estate, silhouettes of herself, taken by the many hidden cameras. Seeing her own movements played back in real time sent a chill through her. She realized nothing she had done since entering the building had gone unnoticed. Every step, every glance, every decision was being observed and recorded. She backed away slowly, feeling her pulse rise. Her eyes scanned the room for anything that might help her escape, but the equipment looked complicated, sealed, or bolted to the floor. She noticed a file on a side table with a name printed on the front. When she leaned closer, she felt her stomach drop. The name was her own. Full name, birth date, passport number, and past employment history. All of it printed neatly, as if prepared long before she arrived. She opened the file with trembling hands. Inside were documents detailing her digital accounts, bank records, and personal data she had never shared with any company. The last page contained something even more disturbing, a printed biometric template labeled Pending Extraction. She put the file down, horrified, and stepped back into the hallway. She could sense the building shifting again. Lights flickered. A low, mechanical hum traveled through the floors. Somewhere deeper inside the estate, a system was running, one she did not want to meet. Far away, Evelyn watched the signal intensify on her screen. She knew the extraction sequence had begun, and if the tactical team did not reach the estate soon, the woman inside would cease to exist, not by death alone, but by disappearance from every digital record she ever had. The race to reach Marilene had officially begun. The low mechanical hum inside the estate grew louder, moving through the floors like a pulse. Marilyn felt the vibration under her feet as she hurried down the hallway, unsure where to go, but certain she needed to move. The building no longer felt empty. It felt active, responding to her presence, adjusting its systems, preparing something she couldn't see. The air thickened with the faint metallic smell as hidden machinery shifted behind the walls. Every step she took felt heavier, as if the estate itself were closing in on her. Deep underground, in a level she had not discovered, a different kind of movement was unfolding. Ronan Bale, once Jasper Thorne's trusted collaborator, sifted through stacks of encrypted data on a small terminal. He had been hiding in the estate for days, searching for a way to sabotage the operation. His partnership with Jasper had ended months before, broken by disagreements about how far their identity harvesting methods had escalated. Jasper's obsession with perfection had pushed him beyond theft into something far more merciless. Ronan had tried to stop him once, failed, and then vanished into the shadows of the same system he helped build. Now, hearing the extraction sequence activate above him, Ronan realized Jasper had chosen a new target. He navigated through the system files until he found a name he did not recognize: Marilene Soriano. He opened the folder and saw the details: her biometric map, her scanned documents, and the timestamp showing she had arrived just hours before. Guilt struck him like a blow. Another innocent person had walked into Jasper's trap. He knew he only had minutes before the extraction system completed what it had already begun. He typed quickly, bypassing safety locks he himself had designed years earlier. The system pushed back, reactivating blocks, attempting to reverse his changes. He fought it line by line, forcing the extraction process to slow. It wasn't enough to stop it completely, not without alerting Jasper's remote access systems, but it could buy time. Above ground, Marilyn felt the lights dim again. This time, the lights in the hallway flickered in a rhythmic pattern she hadn't seen before. A nearby door unlocked by itself, sliding open silently. She hesitated, not knowing whether it was an invitation or a warning. But the floor trembled faintly beneath her feet, telling her she needed to act. She stepped inside and found a storage room containing unopened boxes, maintenance tools, and vents large enough for a person to crawl through. The room offered no escape route, but it gave her a small barrier between herself and the main corridor. She stood still, listening to the hum of machines above and below. Her heartbeat thudded against her ribs. Far from the estate, Evelyn Hartwick rolled in one of the tactical vehicles, racing down a narrow road toward the coordinates she had sent earlier. The convoy moved quickly, but the landscape worked against them. Dirt paths, dense trees, and isolated stretches slowed their progress. Evelyn kept her eyes on the device in her hands, watching the extraction sequence fluctuate. The pattern was unusual. Someone inside the estate was interfering. The disruptions were not from random system errors. Someone with knowledge of the network was trying to sabotage it. That realization gave her hope. If someone inside was working against Jasper, the woman trapped in the building might survive long enough for the team to reach her. She tracked the signal closer, watching it shift rapidly as if two forces were fighting over control of the system. Inside the estate, Ronan managed to disable one of the extraction modules. A sharp beep echoed through the basement, signaling a forced shutdown. But the system adapted, redirecting its processing to another module. Jasper had designed everything to withstand interference. Ronan worked faster, his hands trembling with urgency. He could hear faint vibrations from the machinery above, signaling that the estate was still operating at high capacity. Then, for the first time in hours, a new sound reached him, the distant echo of engines approaching. Vehicles. Multiple. Ronan realized help was on the way. He sent a final command to stall the core of the extraction sequence, and then left the basement, knowing he would have to face whatever came next. Above him, Marilene's room shook lightly as the estate responded to Ronan's interference. A cold draft crept through the vents. She stepped back, unsure what was happening. The walls emitted a low mechanical groan, followed by a sudden stop. Silence. Then, in the distance, she heard something she had been desperate to hear ever since she arrived. Footsteps from outside the estate, heavy and purposeful. Moments later, the front doors burst open as a tactical team swept inside. They found her huddled near the storage room, exhausted and trembling, but alive. Hours later, as officials inspected the property, Ronan surrendered without resistance. He told them everything: the system, the victims, the locations, and Jasper Thorne's methods. His cooperation exposed networks operating in several countries. But Jasper himself was gone, evaded capture again, vanished through digital shadows he had built long before this night. Marilene returned to the Philippines under protection, but her quiet life would never feel the same. She had faced an invisible world that operated in silence, hidden behind screens and false promises. A world that could erase someone without leaving a trace. The story did not end with her rescue. It ended with a question that echoed across borders. How many others had walked into a similar trap, unaware that someone was waiting on the other side of a screen to steal not just their future, but their identity itself? The estate remained sealed off for weeks after the rescue. Investigators, digital forensics teams, and analysts worked day and night to understand how Jasper Thorne had built something so advanced without anyone noticing. Every room held devices designed with extreme precision. Every system was layered with traps meant to erase data the moment someone attempted to open it. Even empty spaces inside the walls were filled with hidden wiring, backup processors, and optical sensors that responded to motion. Authorities realized they were not dealing with a simple criminal. They were dealing with an architect who understood both technology and human psychology on a dangerous level. Marilene stayed in a protected facility in Sydney under the supervision of local authorities. She was safe, but her mind lingered on the estate every night. She often jolted awake from dreams where the hallway lights flickered again or the hum of locked machinery echoed in the darkness. Her life before the trip felt distant, like a memory washed in fog. She wanted to return home, but she feared stepping into any unfamiliar environment. Even simple sounds like air conditioning switches or digital beeps sent waves of anxiety through her system. Meanwhile, Ronan Bale remained in custody, isolated from other detainees for security reasons. He cooperated with investigators, giving them access to encrypted files that mapped out Jasper's operations in different countries. Many of Jasper's targets were chosen for their clean records, people who lived quietly, worked steadily, and rarely traveled, people who would not be noticed immediately if they vanished. Ronan's confessions revealed that Marilene had been selected months before she received the email. Her profile was scanned quietly through databases without her knowledge. Every step, from the message to the ticket, had been part of a script designed to lure her in. Evelyn Hartwick continued piecing together the remnants of Jasper's digital footprint. Each file, each code fragment, pointed to a mind that planned years ahead. She discovered hidden markers left on servers across several countries. These markers were like silent signatures, patterns that Jasper embedded within systems he had infiltrated. Evelyn tracked these signatures methodically, building a map of nodes that stretched far beyond Australia's borders. The more she traced them, the clearer it became that Jasper had built an invisible network capable of moving across continents without detection. One detail bothered Evelyn more than anything else. Jasper had left the estate before the tactical team arrived, but he had not erased everything. For someone as meticulous as him, leaving fragments behind seemed intentional, almost like a message. She studied the fragmented data again and again until she found something she had overlooked, a timestamp embedded in a corrupted file. It referenced a future date, a date not tied to the estate's operation, but to another location, far away. It was a lead, and a dangerous one. Authorities prepared to investigate the new coordinate, but protocols required verification. Evelyn waited anxiously, knowing that every hour gave Jasper an opportunity to relocate again. He rarely stayed in one place long, and his operations adapted quickly. She feared the pattern would repeat, a building disguised as something normal, a victim chosen quietly, and another identity prepared for extraction. Back in the Philippines, Marilene finally returned home under government protection. Her siblings greeted her with relief, but she felt changed, as if she were returning as a different version of herself. Her apartment, once a familiar space, felt foreign. She locked her door carefully each night. She checked windows twice. Her laptop stayed unplugged, and every email that appeared in her inbox made her hands tremble. Authorities tried to reassure her that Jasper's network was being dismantled, but she sensed something greater behind the events. Jasper had chosen her not at random, but as part of a larger plan, one she still didn't understand. Weeks later, Evelyn received confirmation about the new coordinate. The location was active. A faint signal appeared again, strong enough to indicate Jasper was preparing something, but weak enough to suggest it was not ready for full operation. She alerted the team immediately. The investigation restarted with renewed urgency. Marlene's story had ended with her rescue, but the world she had stumbled into continued to move in shadows. Jasper Thorne was still out there, building new paths, choosing new targets, leaving digital ghosts behind him. Months passed, but the shadow of Jasper Thorne's network continued to loom over every investigation. Evelyn Hartwick and her team worked tirelessly, following the faint digital breadcrumbs he had left behind. Each trace led to new systems, hidden servers, and temporary safe houses scattered across the globe. The deeper they went, the more they realized the scale of his operations. Jasper had not built a single network. He had built layers of networks, each one designed to operate independently and erase itself if discovered. It was a living system, constantly adapting and evolving. Marilene tried to rebuild her life in Manila, but the psychological impact lingered. Every day felt like a careful negotiation with the invisible presence of the estate she had entered. She avoided unnecessary travel, never shared personal information online, and took precautions against even minor threats. Her family noticed the change, the nervous glances, the cautious steps, the sleepless nights. She had survived, but she was no longer the same woman who had boarded the plane to Sydney. She carried the weight of being watched, the knowledge that someone could target her again without warning. Meanwhile, Evelyn discovered a peculiar anomaly in one of Jasper's dormant servers. Unlike the other systems, which had been meticulously cleaned, this one contained a residual algorithm that still pinged at irregular intervals. The signature matched a previous extraction sequence, but with modifications indicating it was ready to reactivate at a precise time. Evelyn studied it carefully, realizing that Jasper had anticipated failure in his previous operations. He had built fail-safes to ensure continuity, even if parts of his network were destroyed. Every system he left behind was a ghost, ready to awaken. The timestamp embedded in the algorithm matched a date just weeks away. Evelyn ran simulations and found that the program could initiate extraction sequences within seconds of an unsuspecting target entering the wrong location. The scale of Jasper's planning was staggering. He had created a world where ordinary individuals could disappear into a machine he controlled without leaving a single trace. The thought made her stomach tighten. She realized that even with Marilene safe, countless others could fall into the same trap. In Manila, Marilene received a cryptic email that set her heart racing. It contained only coordinates and a timestamp, both familiar from the pattern she had witnessed in Sydney. She knew immediately that this was a test, a message meant to gauge her response. She did not open any attachments, she did not click links, and she deleted the email. But the reminder was chilling. Jasper Thorne's reach extended far beyond the estate. His operations had no boundaries, and no one was truly safe once he had identified them as potential targets. Evelyn coordinated with international agencies to track the coordinates. They found that the location corresponded to a new, unregistered facility in a remote region of New Zealand. Satellite images showed a recently built estate with features similar to the one in Sydney. Isolated, surrounded by dense trees, with no visible staff or security presence. The resemblance was unmistakable. Jasper was preparing another trap, and the pattern was repeating. Whoever entered this building could become the next victim in his identity harvesting operation. As the team prepared a tactical response, Ronan Bale was brought in again to assist. His familiarity with Jasper's systems was invaluable. He guided the team through potential extraction methods and helped design countermeasures. Even with Ronan's cooperation, the situation was tense. Jasper had anticipated betrayal. Any interference could trigger automated defenses that would make it nearly impossible to access the building safely. Marilene, following updates remotely, felt a mixture of fear and helplessness. She realized that her survival had not ended the threat. It had only delayed it. Jasper Thorne had become a ghost that moved silently between countries, building invisible traps, exploiting unsuspecting victims, and leaving digital shadows that could not be fully erased. The realization left her frozen with the knowledge that even in safety, she was never truly free. Evelyn stared at her screens late into the night, watching the countdown to the timestamp. Every signal, every anomaly, and every ping was a potential warning. Jasper Thorne was out there, waiting for the next person to step into the trap. A master of a network so advanced, it seemed almost alive. And the world, despite all its technology, was unprepared for someone who had made vanishing into an art form. The clock ticked. The next operation was about to begin.